later. I know that is going to happen. Muy bien, sí. Y buenos días, buenos días. Y está muy nublado. Wow, it is cloudy today. Está muy nublado, ¿no? Llovió.
Muy fría.
Oh, sí, claro. La temperatura es muy, muy normal comparada con otros días, ¿sí? La semana pasada hacía mucho calor y es mucho mejor ahora, a lot better right now. So, yeah, well, knock
Una
on wood.
pregunta,
Sí,
por
sí, dime.
favor. Duolingo.
Sí.
Personal pronouns in relation to yourself, like my clothes. I keep being dinged when I use mis instead of a general article, los, las. Is there a rule? And it seems to happen when it's my stuff. And I know with your body you use los and las and all of that. But is there a rule that says when it's you, like the question was, will you help me tie my shoelaces?
I was going to ask if it was about clothing where you got dinged. There you go.
Me ayudas a atar mis cordones? No. Los cordones.
Yeah.
Los cordones.
Yeah.
So is there a rule when you do and don't?
Kind of. And okay. Yes, there is kind of a rule. And I say it as kind of because as surely as I give you a reason, somebody will go and violate that rule. It is, I would say, not a super hard and fast rule, but yeah. Okay. Also, another thing to keep in mind is that it is the kind of rule that if you make a mistake, it's not like it's going to be the end of the world. Okay. It's like the kind of NBD mistake, no big deal, NBD. Somebody will still totally understand what you're talking about if you make this mistake. Okay. So generally speaking, with body parts, I'm washing my hands, I'm brushing my teeth, I'm combing my hair. We don't generally say my hair, my hands, my feet, my face, whatever. We generally use an article. Me lavo la cara, not me lavo mi cara, I wash my face. Even though in English we say I wash my face. For body parts, your general rule, and let's call it a rule of thumb, is most of the time when you're talking about your own body part, it won't be my hands, my face. Yeah. Not my stomach hurts, not me duele mi estómago, me duele el estómago. Okay. So body parts, we use the word. Now, as surely as you say that, you'll hear somebody there are certain situations where, like, if there's confusion and they want to drive home the thing, it's I'm putting this on my feet, not on my grandkids' feet. Somebody might specify in a situation like that if they think there would be confusion about who does this body part belong to. And the clothing thing is going to come in with that and kind of follow that same rule. So, me pongo los zapatos, I put on my shoes, but we won't say mis zapatos. Me pongo mis zapatos won't be it. Me pongo los zapatos. I put on the shoes. The odd little corollary to that is, por ejemplo, if you want to all say, we all have to put on our hats. We're taking a hike out to the desert and we all have to have a hat on. Nos ponemos el sombrero because everybody only uses one hat on their head.
So would it
just
be,
is
it like me cepillo? Is it los dientes or?
Me cepillo los dientes. Me cepillo los dientes. You'll never really hear somebody saying me cepillo mis dientes unless for some reason they're being emphatic about something versus somebody else and they think there's confusion. Me cepillo los dientes. That is the normal way to say that. Me cepillo los dientes.
But if you're talking about somebody else, you would use tus or sus.
I wouldn't.
No?
Los.
No.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of a hard. Once in a while, you hear somebody using that, and then it's hard for me to. I would have to search really hard to find an example where
Okay.
they actually do that, and it would take more time for me to show you an example where they violate that than it would be worth looking for.
Right.
I mean, it's just los.
That's the way it is.
Los
Okay.
or las, la or la, yeah, whatever it happens to be. El or la, yeah.
Marilyn, what if
Generally,
you
it's the
say,
article.
what if you say I'm brushing her teeth? Let's say it's a 2-year-old. It's still, okay.
Okay. Then it won't be reflexive because yes, a 2-year-old doesn't know enough to do a good brushing job. So you got to do it for them. And es muy típico, that is really typical that we as parents and grandparents have to do that. So, cepillo los dientes de mi nieto, de mi nieta. I brush the teeth of my kid, my grandkid, whoever that person is. But it won't be me cepillo. It's cepillo los dientes. I brush the teeth. So the reflexiveness goes away because they're not my teeth.
Okay.
I'm brushing somebody else's teeth. And that same thing happens with, the bañarse thing. Is bañarse when you take a bath, but if you are bathing a toddler or an infant, it becomes a not reflexive thing. It goes back to being a regular verb. Okay, baño al bebé. I bathe the baby, and it becomes not reflexive anymore because that reflexive thing is gone. You're not doing it to yourself. You're doing it to somebody else. So, yeah, sí, es buena pregunta. These are good questions. Yeah, body parts, clothing stuff, generally stick with the words. There you go. And that's good enough. Bien, okay. Hay otra pregunta. Any other burning question that has come up? Oh, no. No? Okay. Bien. Always feel to interrupt if there is something that comes up. Okay. A ver. I'm going to start something here para que podamos ver so we can see. Wow, I wish I could turn off the little music portion of this. I don't know if you hear this music as it is playing. It's sort of annoying. Let me put share screen on. Did you guys try? This was a challenging thing to do, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I thought it's maybe and it's got me on a timer. Shame on them. Let's turn off the music. We can music off. It's going to drive me crazy. That's like music in an elevator. No, I'm trying to make it bigger. I guess it's not going to quite help me with that. Okay, I'm going to have to keep it on the general setting. Okay, this was kind of challenging. So you know what? When you get a challenging thing to do, it's a good idea to always do a 50-50 split. And let's see. What they wanted you to do was to sort out these words into uses of the preterite, uses of the imperfect, preterite keywords, and imperfect keywords. So with keywords, what they were looking for are kind of time signature ideas that will generally fall into the imperfect or the preterite as a signal for, this time signature, we generally use it with preterito, or this time signature. This talks about not completed actions. So we're going to put it into imperfecto. So the keyword segments were for time signature phrases or time signature words. Yeah. So it's good to like 50-50 shave these off and not try to do everything, but only do that. So let's look at time key words. Some things won't fit in those categories at all, but here's a word that does. Ayer, ayer. Ayer es yesterday. ¿Verdad? Right? So would we generally put that as a signal for preterito or generally a signal for imperfecto?
Preterito.
Generally preterito. So let's do our signature words. Wow, will it let me do that? Yes, it will, but I have to hit that little space pretty well. Okay. And I want to say generally because, you know, there are situations where somebody could use ayer and maybe be using imperfecto, but they'll be in more complex structures. Most of the time when people use ayer, they're talking about a completed action. And that'll fall into the preterito. Probably it's going to use a preterite verb. Let's use for another time signature word. Oh, cada, and I'm picking this because it's small print. Wow, hard to read. Cada, which means each or every. And we're going to pair up cada with cada semana, every week, cada año, every year, cada mes, every month, cada día, every day, each or every. Cada means each or every. Will we put cada into generally, I will use preterito with cada día, cada semana, or imperfecto?
Imperfecto.
Imperfecto. ¿Por qué? Why would you put that in imperfecto?
You used to do it each week or each month or each year. It was something that was just kept on happening.
A lot, yeah. So anytime you get each or every, it indicates repetition. And repetition is generally going to signal, wow, we really need to use imperfecto. Because I will tell you, in the case of something like repetition, people are really going to notice that, you know, if you used every day, you're never going to use a preterite with every day. Preterite doesn't fit with that because preterite means it's over. And so if you want to talk about something that happened every day or every month or every year we went on vacation, even though you think, wow, a whole year between this, it's every year. So imperfecto. Okay. Here is another time generated idea. But again, some of these wind up being not a single word like ayer, but a phrase. Cuando era joven, when I was young.
Imperfecto.
Imperfecto, because yeah, when I was young is going to generally signal something that what happened, or a situation that was present when I was young. It's a description. When I was young is technically falls into that description category. And it's when I was young is very amorphous. It's not a definite beginning, a definite end. It's not cut and dried, if you will. So we'll generally be using imperfecto with that. Okay, let's pick another time signature idea. Anoche, last night, anoche.
Preterito.
Preterito. And again, like ayer, yesterday, anoche, last night, signals a specific day. So we have a very neat, it fits in a little box that has a definite beginning and a definite end, last night. Okay. A ver. We got another time-oriented phrase. La semana pasada, last week.
Preterite.
Generally, that's going to generally fit with preterito. Because again,
I struggled with that one a lot because to me that was starting to get like, you know, not real specific. Like an event start and an event end. Last week's a pretty broad statement, but you know,
it's 7 days, isn't it?
Yeah. You know, it's like sometime last week I ate pizza.
Yeah. But again, yeah, I ate. Yeah, so it's still kind of over. La semana pasada fits more neatly into that. This is a nice box of time. It's not when I was young. Well, how often was that? Yeah. La semana pasada is more, even though it's a 7-day stretch, it's a more definite period in the past. But I can see why you might struggle with that because, yeah. You know, and these are not like 100%. You might have somebody using an imperfecto with ayer, you know, yesterday I was doing something when something happened. So they can get mixed a lot, but these are like kind of general rules. Let's pick another time sequence. El año pasado. El año pasado es last year.
Preterit.
Preterito.
Preterito. Again, año pasado is like la semana pasada, last year. So we're putting it into a definite time period. I know, wow, that was 365 days last year, wasn't it? But something happened last year. It's a neater box to put into than when I was young. When I was young is very vague, but last year puts it in a definite year. Or if you're naming the year, in 2018, in 2010, it's going to fit into preterito much. It's more likely to signal. Let's put it this way. It's much more likely to signal you need to use preterito with these kind of time signature words. Okay. A ver. Oh, here is a word that is a time indicator. Mientras. Mientras means while.
Imperfecto.
Imperfecto. This is one that you kind of have to get used to and just tell yourself, mientras is going to signal imperfecto. It always does. It always does. While this was going on, because what we're going to do is mientras is going to pair up with the idea of while somebody was doing something. Mientras pairs up with background action, and that means imperfecto. Mientras is always going to be paired up with an imperfecto kind of form. Because in English, what we say, you know, while I was washing the dishes, somebody else was putting away leftovers. Okay. Mientras indicates background action. Let me find another time. Oh, here's a time signature word. De niño. De niño means as a kid. Imperfecto. De niño is very much like this phrase, cuando era joven. These are standard, you can use as, you can think of cuando era joven and de niño as chunks. These are chunks that people typically use when they talk about their own personal experiences or somebody else's personal experiences. You know, when my grandpa was young, something was done. When, as a kid, I used to do something. These are always things that talk about the past in a descriptive way as something that is going to be not fitting into a neat, over and done with event. Okay. Let's pick another time signature group. Todos los años or todos los días.
Imperfecto.
Imperfecto. And that one is very much akin to this idea of cada semana, cada año, cada mes, cada día, Cada means each or every, and this is just a different way of expressing that same idea. Todos los años, except we have to use it as todos los. Cada always stays cada. That word never changes, cada. But todos always pairs up with a los or a las. Todos los años, todos los días, todas las semanas, every week. It's a different way of expressing this idea of cada. So again, todos los años indicates repetition, repetition, repetition. Something that was done on a regular basis, a lot, frequently. Habitual being the point. Okay. Here's
Well, then
another.
go and take habitual events and put it down there.
Yeah. Anything habitual,
But
anything that is done frequently, a lot, but not with a definite number of times, just done over and over again, falls into that imperfecto category. Let's look at de repente. De repente is all of a sudden.
Suddenly. Preterit.
Preterito. De repente means suddenly, all of a sudden, boom, that fast. Okay. De repente means something that, oh my goodness, it came out of the blue, right? Suddenly. And de repente is always going to signal, that one is absolutely always going to signal a preterito, because de repente means boom, 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 suddenly. The meaning of that phrase is something happens as an event. Okay, not a bunch of times. Boom, it just happened. And that's going to fall into preterito camp. Okay, let's find another time signature phrase. En ese momento. At that moment. En ese momento.
Same thing, preteriti.
Preterito is where that fits better, because en ese momento means I'm pegging it on a timeline at a specific time. It does not say a bunch of times. It does not say a lot. En ese momento is not wishy-washy about when. It is pegging something to a definite time. At that moment, at that time. So that will pair up with an idea that is expressed in preterito. It's good to know these time signature words because they help prepare your brain when you hear somebody telling a story and they start with de repente. Ooh, you know something is happening fast. Okay, all of a sudden. So it's really, really helpful to know, because it's these time signature phrases or words can help signal to your brain, oh, I'm going to hear this kind of an action. This is what I can prepare my brain for. Oh, okay. Siempre or nunca. They're opposites. Siempre, always. Nunca, never.
Perfecto. Imperfecto.
Siempre is always. So that means a lot. A lot, and that indicates a repetition. Okay. Nunca generally will signal imperfecto, always. From a philosophical point of view, if you never did something, isn't that once? Well, but nunca often does signal imperfecto. Sometimes people may break that rule a little bit with nunca, but they do not break it with siempre. I can tell you that. Siempre always indicates something that happened more than once, but we don't really know how many times. Okay, so it's interesting to say, you know, if you want to say, I went to this place twice, that's going to fall into camp preterit, preterito. You did it twice because it's definitely this many times. Okay, it's repeated, but definite number. So that will be paired up with a preterite idea. Even though there was a repetition in there, it's a definite number. Okay, let's take a look at con frecuencia, frequently.
Imperfecto.
Imperfecto, because that means frequently, that means, oh, more than once, repeated. Do I know how many times? I don't know how many times. Okay, because I don't know how many times, just a lot. That is very fuzzy, very indefinite, but repeated. So when you hear con frecuencia, they're going to pair it up with an imperfecto. Always, always, because con frecuencia is going to mean, wow, they did it a lot. There was repetition there. Repetition is always going to fall into camp imperfecto. And I think we've only got one more time signature word, and that time signature for, well, phrase is enseguida, right away.
Preterito.
Preterito. Enseguida, like de repente, indicates something. Boom, 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 right? The meaning of enseguida is right away, and that is pegging something to a point in time. We don't, you can think of imperfecto as being kind of a leisurely past tense. It's kind of leisurely imperfecto. Oh, this stuff was happening. I don't know how often, a lot, but I don't know how often. It was just going on. Imperfecto is a very leisurely pace. It's past, but we don't really know when. Okay, so these kind of time cue words can be helpful, both from a listening perspective and from a speaking perspective. If you want to talk about what I did at a certain time of the day, yesterday, last night, even last week, preterito is your bud. It's your go-to tense. Bien? Make sense? This is really, really, really helpful to know. Okay, all right. So now we're left with things that are not, we got our 50-50 rule out. We took all of our time cue words and we are left with actual, well, rules, I guess. Rules. They're not tied to actual Spanish words, but to ideas. Feelings in the past. Feelings in the past.
Imperfecto.
Imperfecto. Generally. And I'm going to probably at some point do a caveat with that. Feelings in the past. Okay. Most of the time that's imperfecto. There will be some times when feelings will use preterito, but we'll kind of show you when. Okay. Oh, an interrupting action. Something that happened in the middle of something else.
Preterito.
Preterito. This one is kind of important. Sometimes when you're talking about actions in the past, you're talking about two actions, therefore you have two verbs. You might say, while I was washing dishes, my kids were putting away the food. And they're both going on simultaneously. Those are going to be both imperfecto. But if I said something like, while I was washing the dishes, the phone rang. The phone rang is not simultaneous. The phone rang is not happening at the same time as I'm washing. I'm washing, boom, phone interrupts. Phone happens, it rings right in the middle of something else. That's what we call an interrupting action. And the interrupting action is going to use preterito. But what was happening before the phone ringing, during the phone ringing, and after the phone ringing, that's imperfecto. That's a hard one for people to get used to, but that's kind of a hard and fast thing that happens, right? So when people use two imperfectos together, they mean both those actions were going along at the same time together, but one did not interrupt the other. The one interrupting the other has to be something that happens that's kind of cut and dried. Okay, so cut and dried, what would that be typically? It would be things like while I was washing the dishes, the phone rang. While I was giving class, it started to rain. This thing happened right in the middle. Okay. It's going to be an interrupting event, something that you can pinpoint. Oh, it started at this exact minute. Okay. Bien. Okay. A ver. Okay. Let's take setting the scene in the past, setting the scene.
Imperfecto.
Imperfecto. Setting the scene, you should think of it as describing. It's like watching what's going on a stage. Setting the scene means you're describing. You're describing. Anything that's describing in the past is imperfecto. Anything that's describing. Age in the past.
Imperfecto.
Imperfecto. Imperfecto. When I was 10, when I was 20, when I was young, even if it's when I was 10, and you think of, well, that was a specific year, but anything that talks about age in the past is going to be imperfecto. So that'll wind up being phrases like this. They'll use tener or era, one or the other. Cuando era joven, when I was young. Cuando tenía 20 años, when I was 20. It's going to either use tener in imperfecto or ser in imperfecto. It'll either be era, eras, era, éramos, eran, or tenía with years. Yeah. Tenías with years, tenía with years, teníamos with years. That's going to use a form of era or a form of tenía. Boom. Easy to figure that one out. Okay. Completed action. Which camp? Preterito. That one's a cut and dried. A completed action is preterito. Description.
Imperfect.
Imperfecto.
Imperfecto. Descriptions in the past fall into imperfecto, always. That's kind of a different way of describing setting the scene, but anything that's description. The trees were green, the mountains were tall, my cousin was a short kid. It's all description, and it's past description, so it's got to be imperfecto. Okay, a one-time action, a one and done.
Preterito.
Preterito. That's the definite, boy, that is like the absolute, always easy to recognize. It happened once, it's boom over, boom, preterito. Okay, great. Ooh, habitual events.
Imperfecto.
We talked about this one a lot with these descriptive words. Imperfecto, habitual events has to be an imperfecto. Okay, this one might be a little hard to figure out. Ongoing events in the past.
Preterito.
Preterito, yeah, ongoing. That's like setting the scene. Ongoing events is, again, it falls into that very, very big category of description.
Oh, so it's
Okay.
imperfecto.
Imperfecto, yeah. Talking about your childhood
Imperfecto.
is usually imperfecto because, again, it's describing, okay? Actions with a definite beginning.
Preterite.
Preterite. Anytime when I mention a definite beginning or a definite end, we are signaling a point. So think of it as a timeline. You know, the timelines you used to get like in history class as a really little kid. If it points to a timeline, a specific timeline, it's preterito. Okay. Ooh, in progress events. In progress events, yeah. I mean, a lot of these kind of that falls into kind of the description category, kind of, yeah. Weather in the past. This one is kind of problematic.
I thought it was imperfect, but
Well, it is imperfect, but weather might have a foot in each world. One foot in the imperfecto world, one foot in the preterito world. So we'll talk about that a little bit in just a little while. Generally, in a very general sense, let's put it in the imperfecto camp, but we're going to put a little asterisk, a little caveat, and say, ooh, watch out, because sometimes weather will be preterito, but it depends on the idea you're conveying.
So if I were talking about a particular hurricane that hit us in Houston, that would probably be preterite.
Yes, buen ejemplo. We're going to take it some weather just examples when we're done with this, because weather can have a foot in each camp, but in general, you can say most of the time we're talking about weather in the past, it's imperfecto. So we're going to show you a lot of examples of that when we're done with our big grid, so that you know when it is one or the other. Okay. A ver. Bien. Action with a definite ending.
Preterito.
Preterito. Okay. Again, if it's a timeline, it's preterito. And this is so tiny, I'm going to have to read it and get up close. Events that happened in a specific time frame.
Preterito.
Preterito. Okay. Sequence of events. That means they happened in a certain order. First, then, next, after that.
Preterito.
Sequence of events. This one's important for you to know. Whenever I give the rolling account of here's the order these things happened in. That is what you mean by sequence of events. I woke up, I got out of bed, I went to the bathroom, I peed, I washed my hands, I brushed my teeth. They happened in that order. That is what we mean by sequence of events. And sequence of events means I'm hitting a point on the timeline. Boom, 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 boom. And those are all gonna be preterito, all of them, okay? Because they all have their little box of time. They fit into a little box of it happened. Or if I have a timeline, this number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, that's what we mean by sequence of events. I tell what order things happened in. And then this is the tough one. Time in the past. What does that mean? What that means is, It was 4 o'clock. I looked at my watch and suddenly I realized it was 4 o'clock already.
Preterito?
This is the oddball in
Uh-oh.
the bunch, and this is why I left it for last. This is the one and only example out of all of these that if you are a person who thinks logically, it makes no sense.
Because time in the past is specific.
Because isn't that specific?
Yeah.
Wow, it was 4 o'clock. Well, that's a timeline, but I cannot give you why. I cannot give you a philosophical reason of why this is. But when you, here's what I can tell you. When you're telling time in the past, if you're telling time in the past, it is always imperfect. It just is. So that means it's only going to use one verb.
Right.
And that verb is ser. So it's either going to be era or son. Okay. So
Yeah.
we're going to look at that time, and honestly, for you speaking to somebody, it probably isn't going to come up a lot. That probably isn't going to happen a lot. So I'm going to show you a few examples, but I'm going to tell you, do you need to worry about that one? Probably not at all. Probably not at all. I would say don't worry about that, but we're going to talk. Oh, and it's getting me. I took my share off. It's dinging everything to tell us we were all correct. Yeah. Isn't that great? But that's the why. So let me do a share screen because I do want to show you a couple of things, and then we'll take any questions you've got because you may have one or two or three. Depende. I'm going to show you the few little examples where you need to know that time thing. And what that is really specifically telling time in the past. Always uses imperfecto. Okay. It just does. Just accept that. To me, logically, that makes no sense because it is a specific time. And can you define it? Yes, you sure can, but it is always imperfecto. I think the reason for this, although I don't know for sure, I think the reason for this is that technically it's considered a description, part of a description or part of setting a scene. I think that is why. So, okay. Just accept it. It's always this. So that means, if you're telling time in the present, it's got to be son las 11 menos cuarto. It's son las 11 menos cuarto. Wow, that means if I were to look at my watch, here's the time. It would be 11 o'clock minus 15 minutes, 11:45. Yeah, some people may say that same time as son las 10:45. If that you are a young person and you work on digital clocks and forget that analog crap, because I don't do it. That is the way a lot of young people think. A lot of young people don't even own watches. It is a fact. I will tell you that, having taught school. They are not even wearing these unless it's a Fitbit and they're timing themselves on laps. Okay. So las 11 menos cuarto, por ejemplo, es la 1:30 means it's
1:30.
this time. Yeah. Son las 3 means it's this time. There you go. That's telling time in the present. But if I tell that time in the past, it was 5 o'clock when she started cooking dinner. It was 5 o'clock. It was 5 o'clock is going to be eran, the imperfecto of ser, eran las 5. Eran las 5. And just take it on faith that son las turns into eran las. You're only using the verb ser. That's it. Okay. So whereas telling time in the present uses either son for multiple for hours that are more than one, or es for anything relating to the 1 o'clock hour, right? this is going to use only eran for a plural number of hours, or era for the 1 o'clock hour. So that's what you're going to hear. Eran las 5. Eran las 2:30, right? Eran las 8 de la noche. It was 8 at night. Okay. You're going to hear things like that. But for the 1 o'clock hour, era la 1. It was 1 o'clock. So telling time in the past means that and nothing else. Only that verb, era or eran. Yay! You don't really have to think about it. It just will be that. Bien?
Sí.
Okay. Bien. Vale. Let's take a look at weather, because weather is kind of an odd duck. And they use that as one of our examples. And sometimes we can fool ourselves into like thinking too hard about this and making it too complicated, or oversimplifying it and saying everything is going to be this way 100%. And weather is one of those odd categories. But we do talk about the weather a lot. And we do talk about the weather in the present and in the past a lot. So this is probably more useful for you to know than the telling time piece. Okay, so we're going to get rid of all of our telling time piece. Weather. If you're talking about weather in the past, generally, you know, it's your rule of thumb. Generally, if it's if it's descriptive in nature. Oh, I can't type. In nature. Imperfecto. Generally. Okay. So, por ejemplo. But it won't be 100% rule, you know. Cada día, every day is 100% rule. Imperfecto. Ayer is an almost 100% for preterito. En el año 2010, in the year 2010, is going to be generally preterito. Yeah. Okay. But, you know, weather in the past, sometimes we're describing and sometimes we're signaling that something happened, boom. And the something happened, boom, is not going to be imperfecto. Okay. So that's where we might get a little confused. But when you think about it, this will make sense. So if I want to say it was hot, we're going to have to use hacer. Hacer with calor, right? En presente hace calor. Wow, it's hot. But that means right now. And if you want to say, wow, it was hot. It was hot. Instead of it is hot, it was hot. It's a description. So, hacía calor. Oop, I need to get my Spanish keyboard back here. A ver. Hacía calor. ¿Sí? Hacía calor. Bien. Okay. I want to say, oh boy, it was raining. It was raining really hard. I'm describing what the weather was. So I might say, estaba lloviendo. It was raining. Or I might choose to just take llover and put that into imperfecto, because that means pretty much the same thing as estaba lloviendo. Llovía. Llovía. Llovía, because it rains. I can't rain, you can't rain, we can't rain, because we're not weather systems. So it only gets conjugated that way. Llovía, right? Yeah. It never gets conjugated for nosotros or tú or yo, because we don't do the weather. Okay. It does the weather. whatever the sky is up there. Yeah.
But
Estaba
Marilyn, if you were saying ayer llovía, that's sort of like going to preterite.
Ooh, depende. It depends what you in your brain, how you are thinking and how you want to convey that action. If I want to convey it as a description, I'm going to keep it in that league of llovía or estaba lloviendo. However, if I want to convey the idea of, oh, this happened and it's done, I might put it into preterito. And I'm not really describing, but I'm just saying, oh, this happened yesterday. Okay. So you may hear people saying, ayer llovió. Can't get my keyboard. Llovió. Okay. Llovió mucho. It rained a lot. Ooh, rained a lot yesterday. And if I want to put it into a little compact, more conveying to you, oh, this happened yesterday and it's over, I might put it into preterito. Or, por ejemplo, you're with your grandkids you're stuck at soccer practice. You're stuck supervising. Yeah. And you want to say los chicos jugaban al fútbol cuando empezó a llover. The kids were playing soccer when it started to rain. Now, even though it's weather, it started to rain, tells you on the timeline, boom, it's a specific moment. So expressions like it started to rain, right? They might get put into preterito because that might be creating a better picture in the mind of that person for, oop, it happened like this. But all this other stuff was going on at the same time. So with weather, that kind of might have a foot in each camp. 1 foot in camp imperfect, 1 foot in camp preterito. Depende. It depends on the idea you're creating, right? If I'm just kind of telling the facts that this happened, it might be preterito. If I'm indicating when it initially started, imperfecto. But if I just want to describe, imperfecto. Okay. So people may flip-flop with weather depending on the idea they want to convey. If they want to convey, oh, happened at a very specific time, they might peg it with preterito. And that's exactly what it's a picture they want to make pop into your head. Oh, this happened and boom. Okay, all done. As opposed to describing. And how do you know? Because people, when they speak, you will know it better right now from the point of view of, I'm hearing somebody telling a story. Okay. So how I want you to think of this whole weather piece right now is not when you choose to speak, put that aside for a little bit. When somebody tells you a story and they're including the weather with it, they're signaling, creating a picture in your brain by using imperfecto, description, happened for a long time, versus preterito, oh, boom, happened like that. So whenever you read or hear a story being told, any kind of narration, people very specifically choose that one verb to create this impression versus a lot, but I don't really know when. And it doesn't really matter when with the timeline. Imperfecto. Boom. Preterito. It depends, and they will choose one verb or the other to create that picture in your brain. So the picture in your brain should be for imperfecto. It's kind of like, oh, a camera watching. Ooh, look at all this stuff happening. Look at all this stuff happening. It's a lot of narration, a lot of description versus boom, it happened, boom, it happened, boom, it happened. Preterito. People choose the tense to create a picture in your brain. Bien? See? Okay. That feels but it probably feels very uncomfortable right now, doesn't it?
Maybe if we're just reading it. The speaking past is going to come in about 3 years.
There you go. But you know what? Realistically, that's the truth.
Yeah.
That's the truth. Yeah. But there are certain chunks you can always put into a camp. So certain chunks is like, cuando tenía 20 años, when I was 20, cuando tenía 40 años, when I was 40.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's going to be easier.
So those are chunks because they're always descriptive things. Yeah. Would it help for me to do a running narration with the legend that the girl, the story she told about the two? Would that help or not? You get to vote. If that doesn't help, then we won't do it.
It would help me because I didn't get to it.
Okay.
But I'm a slacker this week, so if everybody else went through it in great detail.
Está bien.
I'm
That's
fine to go.
okay.
As long as we don't have to pronounce their names.
Oh, yeah. Sí,
Yeah.
eso es. That is true. And I will tell you, even if somebody who is used to it, you know what? Native speakers say those names are hard to do. They're Nahuatl words. They come from a language called Nahuatl. They are like all kinds of consonants that should not be there together. It is hard. And that's why in Spanish, they get nicknames. And the nicknames are Ixta and Popo. Ixta and Popo, because they don't like doing those, a lot of them don't like doing a whole great big long indigenous name either. And
I did okay until the very end was confused. The very end was confusing.
okay, yeah. So what does help? What helps is that number one is she's going to do this slowly. She does it very slowly. And secondly, that this is a story. Why did it not turn that off? Hang on. Okay. Yeah. I think I did not get rid of the screen first. Okay. You should know in many textbooks for high school kids, this is typically used as a storytelling device to illustrate when and why you will hear these two tenses used. Okay. It's a famous story. It's a story that all Mexican kids learn as little kids. It is an origin story, an origin fable. And all native peoples, all indigenous peoples have these kinds of origin stories. Even we Anglos have these origin stories when they're legends like, Paul Bunyan or Johnny Appleseed or things like that they're kind of quasi-historic, but we don't really know how. Some of it is, kind of amplified. Real events did not necessarily happen, that kind of thing. Okay, so let's see the origin story. This is the origin of two volcanoes that actually sit outside of Mexico City. It is the native Aztec explanation of how these two volcanoes came to be. And it is both a love story and a war story and all that. Oh, all the good the good smoochy parts and the good gory parts I'll put together, but she's going to simplify.
México existen muchas historias y
And we'll turn on the
cuentos,
CC.
pero la favorita es la historia del volcán de Popocatépetl e Iztaccíhuatl.
Iztaccíhuatl, and look at that. They didn't even, the AI couldn't even figure out how to do that, but it could figure out Popocatépetl. Wow, I'm impressed that YouTube AI could figure that one out. Okay, so you're going to see some errors when she does the native names because AI with YouTube doesn't know how to do that, except it knows Popocatépetl. Wow. They shorten that to Popo for obvious reasons. Okay.
Hola chicos, yo soy Andrea y hoy les voy a contar una historia.
I'm going to tell you a story.
Esta historia dice así. Hace mucho tiempo,
Hace mucho tiempo, a long time ago. Here is another chunk for you to know. Hace mucho tiempo, a long time ago. That's what it means. Literally, it makes much time. So, hace mucho tiempo is always going to mean a long time ago, because we don't have a formal word ago in Spanish. Hace mucho tiempo.
existía
Used to exist, because if it existed, I don't know when it started or
un
stopped.
rey.
Oh, there was a king. Sometimes you'll hear érase un rey or era un rey. But notice she uses imperfecto. Existía un rey. A king existed. There was a king.
Muy rico,
Ooh, very
tenía
rich.
mucho dinero
He had a lot of money. Is that an event that he had a lot of money? No, he just had the money. It's description, folks. Having a lot of money, had a lot of money is not an event. It didn't happen. If it didn't happen, it's got to be imperfecto.
y era rey de un castillo,
He was the king of a castle.
¿ok? Ese rey tenía una hija.
He had a daughter. He did not give birth to her. Of course, he was obviously involved in that process of procreating that child, but it's not like he gave birth. No, he had a child. He had a child. Not an event, just she belonged to him. She was a part of his family group. It's description. Tenía imperfecto.
Aquí, la hija se llamaba Iztaccíhuatl.
Look at that. That is not no. That estás igual is not right. That's AI getting it wrong. But se llamaba is perfectly great. La hija se llamaba. I'm going to tell you guys, you are never going to see se llamaba in preterito. Never. Llamarse, somebody was called, will never, 100% never be preterite. Never. If I say somebody's name was, it's not an event. So it can't be preterito. My first doggy's name was Fido. That doggy, his name was, how long? I don't know, for as long as he lived. Yeah. There's not a beginning and an end. His name was, it's always imperfecto. It's always se llamaba. Always se llamaba.
Es un nombre extraño,
Okay, it's a
difícil
weird
de
name.
pronunciar,
Hard to pronounce.
pero la hija se llamaba Iztaccíhuatl.
Her name was
Esta
Iztaccíhuatl.
hija estaba enamorada.
She was in love. It's how she was feeling. Imperfecto.
Estaba enamorada de un guerrero.
Ooh, she was in love with a warrior. Guerrero, warrior.
Era un guerrero
He was a
de
warrior.
un guerrero. Un guerrero valiente
Ooh, brave
y
guy.
muy fuerte.
Really strong.
Fuerza. Pa, pa, pa. Ella se enamoró.
But now it flipped to. Uh-oh, we had a blip. Okay, hang on. It's going to make me go back in. Now,
Cox got me again.
Cox got me too. They got me too. I actually, this time I can't blame it on Cox. It's probably my Wi-Fi. It's probably a lot of people in my house on the Wi-Fi right now. Okay. So I want you to notice something. When we say estaba enamorada, estaba, she was all puppy eyes. She was in love. Enamorada means enamored. But she was in love. That's a description. But if I flip it to say she fell in love is different than she was in love. Was in love is a description, but fell in love is an action. It's the Cupid drawing his bow, boom, and you're starstruck. Se enamoró falls into the preterito camp. Because if you fell in love, it's a right between the eyes, right
What
in
was
the
that
heart.
expression? How did you spell that?
Se enamoró. Can you see it at the bottom? It's spelled out.
Oh, yes, that, oh, okay, now we're again, this is,
Yeah.
she fell in love. I was looking for the
Yeah.
word caer or whatever.
Oh, and you
Okay.
won't see fell. You won't see caer, fell. No. Enamorarse means to become enamored of. Who says that in English? Exactly nobody. We say fell in love. Se enamoró, she fell in love.
Okay,
It's
got
an
you.
event versus she was in love with, meaning she was in this state. Was in love, there's no beginning or end. Fell in love, boom, right here.
Okay,
Boom. Okay. So she says fell in love for se enamoró to create an idea of it right between the eyeballs, right? Right in the heart. Yeah.
De él. Y los dos se enamoraron.
Oh, they fell in love with each other. It's very reciprocal. They fell in love with each other. Se enamoraron.
Mucho amor. ¿Ok? Los dos se enamoraron. El rey les dijo, ok.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and they do use okay. Les dijo, okay. He told them. Most of the time, you're going to hear decir, which is why I put it in your little category of words to get familiar with. Dijo is said. Most of the time, when we say she said, he said, I said, we said, it's an event and it happened at a certain time. And I said it, it came out of my mouth. It's done pretty fast. It is not at all like taking decir and putting it into imperfecto. If I take decir and put it into imperfecto, it means, well, as I was saying, or as grandma used to say, meaning she said it a bunch of times. Most of the times when we say, I said, she said, it's preterito. It's done, it's out of your mouth, it's over with. So preterito fits the bill. Okay.
Ok, perfecto, súper bien.
Yeah, really
Le
great.
dijo sí a que estuvieran juntos, los dos.
He said okay to them being together, the two of
El
them.
rey dijo sí. Me gusta la pareja.
I like this couple.
Pero ellos dos querían casarse.
Oh, but they wanted to get married. And when you wanted to do something that is descriptive, how they were feeling, they wanted to do something. Querer most of the time is going to fall into camp imperfecto. Querer most of the time goes into camp imperfecto. Somebody wanted to do something. It is very hard to peg a beginning and an end to how somebody was feeling. Hard. So, imperfecto is a better fit for wanted most of the time.
Querían casarse en matrimonio. Un anillo, ¿ok? En la
anillo,
mano,
ring.
el anillo. querían casarse y el rey les dijo sí,
And the
sí se
king
pueden
told
casar.
them, yes, you can.
Pero, ¿qué creen que pasó?
What do you
Pues
think? Ooh, what do you think happened? Pasó. ¿Qué pasó? ¿Qué pasó? What happened? Preterito.
había muchas peleas en
Oh. Uh-oh. Sorry, guys. We may have this ongoing. I may let it just go and stop it. I think it is giving me a problem because I'm stopping it. I'll do narration as she goes along. Perdón. Okay.
esa época, en ese tiempo,
In
y
that time
entonces
period,
el rey le dijo
the
a
king said
Popocatépetl,
to Popo,
era su nombre,
it was
le
his
dijo,
name.
tienes que ir a la guerra,
He said, you have
a
to go off to
pelear,
war, to
tienes
fight.
que ir a pelear
You got to go fight
contra el otro
against
pueblo,
the
tienes
other
que ir a
town.
pelear. Y él le dijo, sí,
He said,
ok.
sure.
Entonces el padre,
The
el
dad,
rey
the
de
king,
Iztaccíhuatl, le dijo al guerrero
he said
que
to the
se
warrior,
fuera a pelear,
he told
que se
him,
fuera
you
a
go
pelear
off
contra
and
el
fight.
otro pueblo, que se fuera a pelear. Y mandó el jefe,
And
el rey, a
ordered,
muchos soldados,
many
muchos
soldiers
soldados del reino,
of the
del
kingdom.
castillo, para proteger el castillo
He sent them
de
off to protect the castle.
guerras, ¿ok?
Lots of wars.
Entonces, Popocatépetl,
Popo,
él se fue
he
con
left.
todos a pelear
He left with
contra
everybody to fight
otro pueblo,
against the other people of
otro
this village.
castillo, ¿sí? Antes de
Before-
decir adiós,
before saying
adiós,
So long,
él, Popocatépetl,
Popo
le dijo a la princesa,
said to the
le
princess,
dijo que cuando él regresara
when
de
he
la guerra,
came back,
ellos se iban a casar,
they were going to get
se iban a
married.
casar.
It was
Y
their
él
future plan
se
to get
fue
married later
a
on.
pelear
And
y
then he
ella
left to
dijo,
fight.
bye bye,
He said, see you
adiós.
later.
Entonces, ¿qué creen?
What do you think?
Popocatépetl ganó.
Popo won.
Ganó la batalla.
He won the battle.
Ganó. Y entonces, en el castillo,
Then in the castle,
aquí, la princesa
the princess,
estaba triste
she was sad.
porque Popocatépetl no había regresado
Popo had
al
not come
castillo.
back.
No había regresado.
Popo had
Y
not
se
come
sintió
back. She was
triste.
sad.
Pobrecita.
She got
Entonces,
sad.
alguien, otra persona, una persona fue al castillo y le dijo
Another
al rey
person went to the
y a la
castle and
princesa
said,
Iztaccíhuatl que Popocatépetl había muerto.
now here they're using some different kinds of past, which are compound tenses. So I'll just do a quick translation here. So we got another bad actor in here. Another person came back to the castle and said to the princess and the king, you know what? Popo had died. We're putting it further back in the past by saying had died. Not that he died, but he had died. Ooh, I'm putting it further back in the past by saying había muerto. That's all that you should take out of that.
Que él había muerto.
That he
Pero
had died.
no era verdad.
But it was not
Él
true.
Estaba vivo.
He was alive.
Entonces, la princesa Iztaccíhuatl se puso muy triste.
Oh, she got sad. Not she felt sad. She became sad. And se puso is a preterit. So we shift